Okay. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Is it resonating?
Yes.
Here's our mic again. Let's try to limit it to clarification questions at this point. We'll take questions whenever you have them. Several of you have come up and asked about this question and that, and I've said, we're getting to that. So that means you're thinking in the right direction. That's encouraging because that means I'm at least helping us head a direction. Okay, we're working for the big picture people. We've covered our intro and our foundation. We're halfway through our 8 key ingredients. And I mentioned that's where we're going to spend most of our time. But later today we're going to pick apart a typical group meeting. And how does that 90 minutes, there are 90 minutes, what do you actually do and how does all that work together? Then we'll take a look at how to start your groups. There are 3 main ways that we have now done enough pilot testing in all kinds of contexts to start groups. And I'll explain that briefly. And then we're just going to highlight the monthly co-leaders meeting. So let's go back to page 23. And we have covered the icebreaker, the blessing list, the open chair, and the open chair worksheet. Now on the bottom of page 23, the next bullet says plan and have one Matthew party. Matthew parties are on page 62. Give me a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with the Matthew party concept? Matthew party. A few of you. Here's how Matthew parties work. First of all, where did we get the term Matthew party? Hey, you're a sharp group. There you have Matthew chapter 9. We're on the sidebar. It says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. What does the very next sentence say? While Jesus was having dinner. Translated? A party. At Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. And then everything broke loose. Because the religious crowd did not like it. That Jesus and Matthew would be inviting sinners and tax collectors, and these two would ever mix together. And it's no different today, folks. I found it's the same thing. There's a religious group who wants to keep things all pure and does not want to ever become salt because that gets messy. But what did Jesus tell us to do? To be salt. Now, it's also important what Spirit of Prophecy says in evangelism. She says, while we should cultivate social ability, let it not be merely for amusement, but for a purpose. There are souls to save. There has been, by now we've covered where Mrs. White was very much about social relationships, right? We've covered that. But it's not just to have fun. There's a purpose why we have time to waste with people. That is to build what? Relationships. Jesus died for who? People. That's what he died for. As far as possible, have your Matthew party on the same day, at the same time, and at the same place as your weekly growth group. This helps to build bridges, break down barriers, and provide a natural next step for inviting people to your group. If a person is able to come to a birthday party on Tuesday at 6:30, there's a good chance that their schedule will be free when you invite them to your regular group on Tuesday. Oh, you're fast learners. No one's asleep yet. So Matthew parties are a pre-bridge to even group. We know that it's very, very rare that people take secular Western society, people will walk into the traditional church buildings. They're much more likely to come to your group, but even as a pre-bridge to group, if you're having a birthday party, no gifts please, that you've turned into a Matthew party for the purpose of inviting your friends to come to a birthday party, let me give you a number of examples of them. The most common Matthew party is an open house, because that happens in the home where the group is being hosted. We had 2 co-leaders. When you do an open house, you invite all of your neighbors for basically just an open house. Now, you don't call these things, please come over for a Matthew party. They're going to look at you like, and what planet are you from? And so you invite them to an open house, or a birthday party, or a Valentine's dinner, or whatever it is. But they're Matthew parties. They're for a purpose. Well, we lived on the Oregon coast. And they invited, here's how you do it. You invite people to an open house Tuesday night at 6:30, if that's your group time. And you say, bring your favorite potluck dish. We will provide the drinks. Why are you providing the drinks? Okay, just want to make sure that I'm talking to the right group here. You provide the drinks. They bring their favorite dish. What are the delicacies of any coastline? Yeah. As we were at our monthly co-leaders meeting, my co-leaders' eyes were this big. And they're saying, oh, Milton, do you know what came in our front door? I said, what was that? And they listed all this stuff that came in. And I said, not a problem. Do we have Fresh Choice around here? You ever heard of that restaurant? Or Fresh Choice, Sweet Tomatoes. Yes. You know Sweet Tomatoes. You walk into the Sweet Tomatoes, and what is on top of every little dish? Peanuts. Why say peanuts? Allergies. Pineapple. People are deathly allergic to those two. Some people are. And we have vegetarian, we have low carb, because you know the things about low carb diets. This is the culture we live in now. And I said to those people, not a problem. Next time, we were in the early days of learning this. Next time, and this has worked over and over and over, as those dishes come in, you meet them at the door, warmly welcome them, and you have a Post-it notepad in your hand. And you explain to them, people have a variety of dietary preferences. Some are allergic to peanuts. Some are allergic to some of the seafoods. Some are allergic to, would you give me just a brief summary, and I'll write it on there and stick it on your dish, and then you can take it on in to the table. Folks, this is not the place to teach the health message. It is the place to build friendships like Jesus did. Just because he went to Matthew's party doesn't mean he agreed with everything that went on there. It's about people. Jesus died for the people. And so they all rolled in. They had a wonderful evening, social. And there were people who came back later as part of that. Now, we did learn something the hard way. It says, remember that Matthew parties are not places for sin to abound. Now, let me clarify. We have learned in some Adventist circles, even though we've been given the health message, there are some at various stages of all of our lives that have struggled with healthful living. This is not the time and place for you to take and say, oh, I know that I can't have this at potluck, but now's the chance where I can bring my roast beef. This is not about this, folks. Some people say, well, did anyone eat all the other food? 30 people came for that open house. Do you think everything else got slicked up? They were all the community people. You bet it got slipped up. But hey, you guys brought a potluck dish today. Ladies, when you go get your potluck dish, and if you look at that one and it was totally empty and yours is only half empty, are you going to have your feelings hurt because your dish wasn't No. It's like, come on, get a life. This is just society about doing stuff with people. And so now, you may always have prayer. I don't know if that's written there. Always have prayer at every Matthew party. You may not be able to ask God to bless all the food on the table. But you can ask God to bless the relationships and the friendships that will form in your home. Can you not? Of course you can. Are you catching the concept of these Matthew parties? They are ways to interact with your neighbors and show them that you love them and that you care about them, for the purpose of not just being a good citizen or having a social event, but for the purpose of building those friendships. You see, when I come to this group, their job is to introduce me to their friends. And if I'm a biker and Darren's a biker here, then Reggie, when he introduces Darren to me, he's going to make sure we connect on a common hobby. Or if I'm a quilter or whatever your hobby is. Because later on, no, I don't know quilting. Because later on, when Reggie's talking with me and I'm going through a crisis moment, he can say, Milton, remember that open house you came to? There's a group of us. Remember Darren, that guy that was a biker? I know you like bike. He's coming. And remember Mark and Horse and Elisa. Remember, and he goes through it. They're coming and she's coming. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, and those weren't religious quackos. Do you see how it breaks down barriers? Is the house a common location for them now? Are some of the people common? Do you see how it's a pre-bridge to inviting them to your group? Does that make sense? I know, the tummy's full, isn't it? Other types of Matthew parties are birthday parties. Once a quarter, our groups would typically hold a group quarter birthday party. And that was, for example, January, February, March, and they hold it in March. That was the time for everyone who had birthdays in that quarter to invite all their friends and just be able to say, I have a group of buddies who are doing this early birthday or a belated birthday party. It's a number of us, they've kind of pooled together, and we're having a birthday party, and I just want to invite you to come to my birthday party. No gifts, please. People are very comfortable going to birthday parties. But it's for a purpose. Do you see that? You catch that? It's not just to have a fun time. Yes, you want to have a fun time, but it's to build the relationships. We've done Valentine's dinners, anniversaries. One group every Christmas did a big cookie exchange. And on that cookie exchange, all the ladies brought a dozen or 24 cookies. And they put them all on the center, and then they provided all the wives with some very big platters. You can get these fancy Christmas platters, plastic things. And they had this little march around Jericho a bunch of times. And they left with a Christmas platter of cookies. Couple things. I do not go to regular midweek groups. When I was a pastor, and whenever the pastor shows up at a group, the dynamics go weird. Because all of a sudden, a pastor or whatever, and that's why I introduce myself. I go by Milton. Not Pastor Milton, I go by Milton. Because the people that we are trying to reach, as soon as you put religious dress to it, religious music, or religiosity, they become suspect. And they write you off before you can get to know them. It's much, much harder. If you don't believe me, read that book that I mentioned earlier, Unchristian, and it'll give you a very eye-opening picture of what we're dealing with in today's society. Any questions about Matthew parties? I go to the Matthew parties, but all my co-leaders knew, and the people that attended, they knew. They never ever had introduced me. I went in jeans and a t-shirt. How did Jesus dress? Did he dress in the religious garb of the day? He dressed as a common person. And in today's world, the religious dress of the suit and the tie, it raises questions in the hearts of people we're trying to reach at a relational level. And so you've got to balance this stuff. But Jesus dressed in the common garb, not the religious garb of the day, in the common garb. Good for Matthew parties? Yes. All right. Let's go back to page 23. Now we're going to go to the group agreement. It is on pages 51 to 53. So group agreement, page 51. How do you spell agreement? A-G-R-E-E. And it's on page 51? Starting on page 51. Starting on page 51. Give me a show of hands. How many of you are familiar with the group agreement concept? A few of you. Okay. This is written out here. I'm going to give you a verbal picture of it. It's all written down here so you can come back to it later, but I'm going to paint a picture. But I want to highlight the first bullet on page 51. Make a new group agreement every year. Now it's quiz time. There was another thing you did every year. The blessing list. Okay, so the group agreement and the blessing list, you do a new one every year. Here's how the group agreement. I'm taking this from the bottom half of page 51. Understand the principles now. I'll explain when you start doing your group agreement in the groups, but just understand the principles. It usually takes 4 weeks, a minimum of 3, but sometimes 4 weeks, to take your group through the group agreement process. You will come the first week that you start your group agreement process, not the first week, but the first week you start the group agreement. Make sense? You'll come with a stack of 4x6 cards and a copy of page 52. And you'll hand out the 4x6 cards, and you'll hand out a copy of page 52 to everybody, and you'll give them instructions like this. We'd like to take a few minutes here, and as we're just getting this group off the ground and we're building trust and we're getting to know each other, we want to take and figure out what are the priorities, concerns, hopes, dreams that you have in being part of a group like this. So on your 4x6 card, on one side, write down your hopes, your dreams, your anxieties, your concerns, whatever you'd like me and my co-leader, whatever you'd like us to know. And then on the back side of your 4x6 card, read down through this handout and choose 5 areas that you think these are top priority as far as I'm concerned for this group. Now here's what actually happens. They forget about the first side of the card because they have a handout, right? And they go immediately to this handout. Some remember to write down hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, but most of them don't. And they start reading down here and they read about priority and affirmation and availability and prayer and openness and honesty. Oh, and they get to confidentiality. And guess what everyone does? Bam-o. They grab that 4x6 card and they write confidentiality. And then they think, okay, how many was I supposed to choose? Oh, 5. And so then they add 4 more to that list. At the end of that 20-minute time period, or 15-minute time period, you collect the 4x6 cards. Before your next group meeting, you and your co-leader go through and you get all the ideas in terms of their hopes, their dreams, their concerns, anything. Because as co-leaders, that's helpful information for you, right? And then you take all of the words that were on the back side of the 4x6 card and you take a half sheet of paper and you just list them on a half sheet of paper. Alphabetical order. And if someone wrote it down on their 4x6 card, it goes on the half sheet of paper. Because you go back week number 2 to your group with half sheets of paper, and when you give everyone a copy of the half sheet of paper, they're immediately going to check out to see if their top 5 showed up where? On the half sheet of paper. And if you miss it, you're in trouble. Remember, can I trust you? Do I belong? Do you see what you're addressing here? And so you have people go through that half sheet of paper and say, would you number the top 5 choices? So it's not just A5, it's number them. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. Then you collect those half sheets of paper. Now you have the top values rising to the top, right? You have the cream on the milk separating, coming to the top. You find what those top 5 for the group at large are, and you come back your 3rd week with a sample draft group agreement, page 53. Here's a sample, a draft. Now, is this the final product? No, it's not. You have the day, time, and place that you're going to meet. You list the co-leaders and their phone numbers. If people think that there's a leadership vacuum in the group, who do you think will rise to the occasion and vie for the power of leadership? The loudest and most obnoxious person. So you state clearly right up front, these co-leaders are our leaders. It just solves the problem. You also then have the top 5. You see them listed there? You go over it with your group and you say, okay, any typos, any clarifications, any rewording? Now what typically happens is in week 3, the group says, no, that's it. This is our group agreement. If there's some typos or stuff you need to fix, you take it home and you come back for week 4. But at week 3, if everything is good to go and everyone says, yep, this represents our group, then you've brought a copy of this, of course, for everybody. They're looking, everyone has their own copy. And at the box at the bottom, you say, let's build our group directory. You ask them to put their name in small letters, their phone number, their email, and their birthday. Why do you want birthdays? Matthew parties. You're gearing up for Matthew parties, and so as co-leaders, you can also send a birthday card. You are their pastors. You are, to use biblical terms, you are their shepherd. You are their spiritual shepherd in that group. And so I put my information there, and then you say, okay, everyone, let's pass one to the right. So mine goes to you, your page would go to him, and I would get yours. And under Jeff's name, I would add my contact name and contact information. You tracking with me? And it rotates all the way around, and when I get back, what do I have? We have a directory. We have something way more important than a directory. What do we have now? Contact information. We have something way more important than contact information. We have commitment. On the blessing list, I wrote their name. Now they have put their own name to the group agreement. They have said, I buy in. The blessing list said, you belong. They now say, I belong. Does that make sense? Now with your group agreement, your copy becomes the master copy. Because as the weeks go along and new people are coming, you leave your copy out by the refreshments. By the way, always, can you pour me a glass of water? I need one glass of water anywhere. Always have, I'm going to get a dozen glasses of water. I can just see it now. Always have refreshments as simple as water. And have the group agreement out by the refreshments. Why refreshments? A 300-pound football player can hide behind a styrofoam cup. You hearing me? I don't care where you go, even into churches all over North America of all denominations, and there's always a coffee bar. Our culture is used to having something in their hand. It's part of our identity now. And if I'm in a group, and if Darren comes up to me and he's trying to help me feel comfortable, but I'm nervous and whatever, and he's kind of getting in my face and he's too close to me, I have something very important to do. I can swirl my water. I can drink my water, because to do this and swirl my water, I don't have to look at him, right? I can divert my eyes. If he still doesn't get it, I can drink my water and make my escape under the guise of, I got to get something to drink. A 300-pound man, football player, can hide behind a styrofoam cup. So you always have refreshments. Make sense? Your copy's the master copy. As people come, they go over to get refreshments, and it's sitting out by the refreshments. They will see the group agreement. One of two things happens. Well, first of all, they usually always read over it because they see everybody's signature and stuff down there. And they either come to you and they say, what's that over there, that group agreement, our growth group agreement? What's that all about? At which time, now notice what I do. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, let me get a pen. Where's a pen? Oh, here's a pen. Okay, now go sign, okay? Sign right there on the dotted line. I don't do that. You low-key it. Oh, that's a group agreement that all of us came up with. This group came up with it. I didn't come up with it, but the group at large came up. Over in the drawer, right beside it, you'll find, if you pull that drawer out, you'll find a bunch of pens in there. And if you want to add your information, your birthday, we'll keep you in the loop of what's going on. Do people want to be kept in the loop? Oh, yes, they do. We'll keep you in the loop of what's going on. When we send out emails, you'll get the same thing that everyone else does. Oh, okay, yeah. And usually, they go over and get a pen, and they just add their information. And they have bought right in. If someone doesn't do that, though, they just look at it, or they ask you about it and don't go get a pen and add there, what do you do every year? You do a new group agreement. So next time around, they'll have some more water under the bridge in terms of trust, and yes, I belong here, and they'll be in the process. And when you rotate them around, we have never had people balk at this. One case we did. When we were first starting out, the co-leaders asked the group if they wanted to do a group agreement. You don't ask. You are the co-leaders of the group. You carry the responsibility of protecting this group. And so, of course, the group said, oh, no group agreement here. That group, after about 9 months, closed up. It closed up 2 accounts. One was because even though 6 months later we tried to introduce the group agreement again, that group, built into the DNA of that group, was a non-commitment. And even try introducing it later, that group attracted what kind of people? Non-committal people. I'll tell you the other reason later on why that group, because we learned some valuable lessons from that group that closed up. Every other week, you need to review portions of your group agreement. How do you do that? I'll give you an example. Susan had moved into the neighborhood. She did not want to come to church, would have nothing to do with church, but she heard about all these groups. She was an Adventist. She wanted to get involved in groups. There was a ladies' group that she specifically wanted to get involved in, and so she was invited because our groups are not closed. She came one night, and one of the co-leaders, after a while, you can get to read and get a general idea, at least a kind of a gut opinion in terms of people and how things are going to shape up in your groups. Well, it became very obvious right away that this lady it was going to be difficult. And so one of the co-leaders thought, I'm going to review a portion of the group agreement. And so she started the group by saying something like this. Hey, we're glad we're all here. We're going to do our kickoff question in just a moment. But I just want to remind us that this group is a confidential group. What I mean by that is, now this was some of the stroke of genius of the Holy Spirit that was not written in the contract. She said, we hold things in this group in confidence. Of course, if someone ever threatened to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, we would handle that in a professional way. But what we share in this group is confidential. As soon as they talked about handling it in a professional way, Susan went through the roof. She stood up and said, if this group isn't 100% confidential, even if I threaten to commit suicide, you see what we're getting at here? Then I'm not going to be part of this group. And she got up and marched out the front door and left. Guess who came back next week? Susan came back with this announcement. She said, I have visited my therapist. And my therapist has said if I should never be a part of a group that was not 100% absolute confidentiality no matter what. And our co-leader said, well, Susan, we're just delighted that you're here. This is a group agreement that we have all come up with, and this is our group agreement, and you're welcome to be part of this with this existing group agreement. Well, Susan knew exactly what this co-leader was countering with. She got up, and she walked out, and she never came back. We learned later we were dealing with a lot of bipolar, number of different things. I guess there's probably different names for them today. We still loved Susan and they stayed in contact with Susan. But do you see how the group agreement protected the group from being manipulated around the block? Don't skip the group agreement. It is vitally important. Any other questions about how the group agreement works? Pretty straightforward. All right, we're on the last two, but this next one is where we'll spend a significant here amount of time. Back to page 23. This one is, let me highlight. On page 23, it says adopt a prayer warrior. That's on page 67. We're not going to go look at it. Here was our goal. We never reached our goal. Our goal was that everybody in the church has a place to belong, even if they were a shut-in. And so we asked every growth group to take and adopt, we don't call them shut-ins, we called them prayer warriors. On page 67, it talks about the responsibility of the group to the shut-in and the responsibility of the shut-in to the group. And it was awesome. The way those groups adopted someone in their group and they became part of that group even though they couldn't attend the weekly group. Okay, let's get now to the very last one there. It says leading Bible study using the Serendipity Bible. It starts on page 35. Called Relational Bible Study. Give me a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with the Serendipity Bible? Is that the Serendipity Bible? Okay. You have a question? No. Oh, you were just raising your hand because I said how many? Okay. Page 35, I have scanned and I'm going to teach you how to use this Bible. It is an incredible Bible. Now the Serendipity is not the translation. It's the NIV translation. Someone came up one time and said, oh, I've never heard of the Serendipity translation. And I said, oh, it's not, it's not the Serendipity translation. Page 35. All right. You'll see this Bible, I'm holding it up here. There's a section at the very beginning that is greenish. Right there, you see on the edges, and there's a center section in the middle that's greenish. I'm opening to the middle green section, and that's what your page 35 looks like. You tracking with me? All right. On this page, you need to write 2 words. General themes. On page 35, somewhere just write general themes. Later on, we're going to be talking about something, and I'm going to refer to the general themes. And what are you going to think? Page 35. These are general themes. Men, women, singles, married, parenting, youth, marketplace, spirituality, special needs, and recovery. By the way, there is a youth edition of only the New Testament of the Serendipity Bible. And all of the themes that they deal with in there are the hot topic themes that youth are dealing with today. So that's just an FYI. Okay, let's turn the page. Page 36. You see men, and you see what? 1 through 6 under men, and you see women, and you see another 6 under women. I'll write on this page, write these 2 words, sub-themes. Sub-themes. Because later on we're going to talk about the sub-themes. I'll explain this later on. As co-leaders, you choose the general theme. We want to do a men's group, a parenting group, a singles group, a spirituality group, a ladies group. You choose the general theme. Your group will choose the sub-theme. We'll explain that later. Okay, under the sub-themes for women, number 7, you see where we are? That sub-theme is called Real Beauty, Living in a World of Glitz. Or number 8, Cinderella Syndrome, When Life is Not a Ball. Ladies, are these sound interesting? Go ahead and turn to page 37 now. And we are going to take sub-theme number 7, Real Beauty, Living in a World of Glitz. And I have given you on page 37 the outline. Now, how many weeks are in this Real Beauty, Living in a World of Glitz?
12.
How many weeks are in a quarter? 13 and a quarter, 12 studies here. 12 studies plus at least 1, and you have a quarter already in place. Does that make sense? Every one of these sub-themes are 1 quarter's worth of material. So under the ladies alone, there is a year and a half of consecutive material just for ladies groups. Making sense? Okay. There on page now 37, right under the number 7, there's a paragraph. It says, it's a constant battle. My hair, my shape, and my clothes are never quite right. I don't need to measure up to the glamorous stereotypes, but where can I find a role model for real beauty? Lady, does this resonate with the world that we live in? It does. Beside that paragraph that I just read you, I would like you to write in postcard advertisement. Postcard advertisement. When you do up little cards to begin advertising your ladies group, there will come a time when you will use this blurb as a postcard advertisement. I'll explain that later. Okay. In general, you see option number 1 is beginners, option number 2 is advanced. Under option number 1, most of those stories come from the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the easy stories of the Bible. Not all of them, but most of them. Under the advanced option, those stories come from the more difficult stories of the Bible. Now, when I say difficult, it's still very easy. It's not hard stuff. So go ahead and let's turn to your page 38. And we are going to look at option number 1, topic number 1. And I'm going to turn in the Bible here. You see the bottom half of this page? You see the women's icon? And it's the story of the woman caught in adultery, right? Now, right under it is a little one-paragraph summary. Right beside this, I'd like you to write these words. Message of hope. Message of hope. You will use this on a weekly basis as you go through these studies. And I'll teach you how to use it. But when I talk about the message of hope, that's where we're pulling it from. Let's read it. I'll read it. It says, the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery is a good example of an amazing act of acceptance by Jesus. Even though the Pharisees put a lot of pressure on Jesus to go along with the crowd and condemn this woman, he chose to accept her and encouraged her to turn her life around. Folks, is that a message of hope? You bet it is. And people today are dying for hope. They are dying for hope. Let me highlight some of this, and then we're going to model some of this after our break. Right under that, it says optional icebreakers. Cross out the word optional. Serendipity by now should know that icebreakers are not optional. Now, to their credit, it may mean that there are two options to choose from. We're going to take a vote, and then when we come back from our break, we will do this together. Let's read these two icebreakers, and then I'd like you to choose one or the other, and everyone's going to need to vote. Option 1, because you only do one icebreaker question. You don't do both of them, just one. Option 1 says, as a child, when were you caught red-handed doing something you shouldn't have? So that's one option. Option 2, who has really been an encouragement to you? You ready to vote? Okay, you red-handed people, raise your hands proudly. Oh boy, look at this. This is, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, this is going to be close. All of you comfort people and encouragers, raise your hand because this is going to be close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Did everybody vote? Oh, I got to do it all over again. If you did not vote for red-handed and would like to be included, raise your hand. If you did not vote for comfort or for encourager and would like to be included, raise your hand. 1, 2. So that we have broken history. In 10 years of doing this training seminar, this is the very first time that the red-handed crowd has won out. That is amazing. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do this question at one of the tables.